Hey there, Benheads. Producer Chris here. I want to remind you that the Ben Joravsky Show is 100% independent, and that means we need you. Without the listener, we don't exist. There are lots of ways you can help us out. You can go visit Ben's brand new website, thebenjoravskyshow.com. He's got brand new featured columns. He's got podcasts. He's got the digital hat if you want to throw in a few digital coins. Bitcoins would be nice, but small change accepted. You can also follow the show on YouTube. We've got the show clipped to 15 to 20-minute segments, make things a little more digestible for people with the internet. And also, we've got shorts. So if you have no attention span at all, you can hang on with us for 1 minute. That helps us out. Check out some of the shorts on YouTube at Benny J Show. Then you can also follow Ben on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. You can find him, like, subscribe, follow, all of the things.
Hello again, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Lefties in Denial Tuesday. Here's why. Nicole Cantello standing by, President, American Federation of Government Workers, Local 704, right here in the city of Chicago. She's going to give us an update what's going on with federal employees. The news is not good as Donald Trump tries to destroy any remnant of the New Deal for all you old-timers out there, any remnant of the Great Society, any remnant of people banding together to form a government that protects their common interest. Anyway, before I get to that, I just got to talk about something that's become clear to me, and the denial of lefties about what's going on in this country now. And I'm not talking about liberals. You know, I distinguish between liberals and lefties. I do that on the show. I feel like there's a reason there's a distinction that most people just don't see, but I see because I come from a community of lefties. I've been among lefties my entire life. And many of them have utter disdain for liberals, okay? Which I can understand why. Well, let me just tell you the latest thing. And I want to shout out to David from Evanston for sending me this update this morning. Shout out, David. And he sent me this truth message from President Donnie. This is something that Donald released today. And here I will now do a reading. All federal funding will stop. That's capital S, capital T, capital O, and P for any college, school, or university that allows illegal protests. Agitators will be imprisoned or permanently sent back to the country from which they came. American students will be permanently expelled or, depending on their crime, arrested. No masks in big uppercase letters with an exclamation point. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Sometimes I think he's just utterly deranged. Anyway, David from Evanston wrote this message. Juxtapose this with David Ferris's conclusion. The Nazi salutes weren't really Nazi salutes. What does it take to just accept that? Actual concentration camps for Jews? The minimization, normalization on our side is astonishing. He's alluding to our dear friend David Ferris at a conversation we had about a week ago regarding whether the Nazi salutes of Steve Bannon and Elon Musk really showed that they were Nazis. He was saying it was more, in his opinion, trolling, trash talking, et cetera, and so forth. But I share David from Evanston's concerns about this. I think you're onto something here, David. I think there's a normalization that's going on in our country right now. And I think it's actually more denial. And now I'm going to tie it to a conversation I had over the weekend with a dear friend, very on the lefty persuasion. And I was orating, as I usually do, about the dangers we're facing in our country right now as I watch Donald Trump just coalesce more and more power all the time. And he's supported by the Republicans in the House and in the Senate. He's got the Supremes. We're going to talk about a Supreme Court ruling that just came down today with Nicole. And so I'm like looking for any wedge that he confronts, and it's hard to see one. He's cutting off the press. He's bullying reporters. He kicked AP off the airplane. He kicked him out of the Oval Office. He's telling the press that he determines who covers them, not them. He determines who's in the pool that covers him and who gets to ask the questions. And it seems like the judges are bowing to that. I think everybody's intimidated to a certain degree. Anyway, I was having this conversation with a young leftist, and she said two things. One, an interesting little comment. One, I'm not really paying attention, okay, because it's too painful to watch. Follow me on this logic, Nicole. But two, even though I'm not paying attention, I think people are exaggerating when they say it's a threat. I'm like, well, if you're not paying attention, why can you weigh in? Why? How do you feel confident to weigh in anyway? She says no. She just thinks she's just weighing in. She thinks Donald Trump is all bluster. There's no there. And he's just saying things to trash talk and troll. And she doesn't take him seriously. And she's madder at liberals. And there's a lot of lefties out there who feel that way. They just hate liberals so much. And I understand. When I listen to Rahm Emanuel on the Bill Maher show, they hate lefties more than they hate Trump. So peculiar, the left. Like each faction of the left hates each other for whatever reason. And so it's like, oh, they want to dismiss Trump. I'm watching Bill Maher and Rahm Emanuel dismiss Trump and bash lefties. And then I'm listening to lefties dismiss Trump and bash liberals. Guys are lunatics, okay? Nicole Cantello is now going to tell us in very real terms what Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing to our federal workforce. Human beings you should care about just as human beings, and the impact it'll have on the real estate markets here in Chicago. Okay. I know you don't care about human beings, some of you, but you may care about downtown real estate. So the impact it has on that. And in her case, she works for the Environmental Protection Agency. So I know you don't care about human beings, ladies and gentlemen, but you might worry about sewage in the water. You know, to get people to care about somebody else, the level of denial in this country, the level of just like self-hate among all these bizarre like factions and divisions in the left. And meanwhile, Trump is coalescing and has more power than ever. You're in denial, lefties. Are you as bad as liberals? No. I don't think anything is as bad as Bill Maher and Rahm Emanuel stroking each other on national TV. But lefties, you're doing your best to catch up. All right, without further ado, I'm going to bring Nicole on. By the way, that was me talking, not Nicole. I don't know if she agreed with anything I said. Nicole, it's good to see you, and welcome back.
Thank you for having me. I do want to say that I think we all need to row in the same direction at this point to try to stop this fascist regime. And I do think that we need to patch up our differences because it's going to take everything we got to overturn this.
I'm with you. Just put aside the differences for a moment. Can you do that, guys? Row in the same direction. I get that you are a rower. People may not know this. We're not going to discuss this, but Nicole is a rowing coach. So I guess the symbolism, what you just said, it resonates on a personal level. All right, Nicole, the last time you were on the show, it was sort of in the embryonic days of the Trump administration. It's now been it's over 6 weeks now. And it was more like threats back then. And now it's a reality on many levels. So why don't you update us on the maneuvers by Trump and Musk to decimate the federal workforce and the impact it's had? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the last time we talked, the fork offer had just come out. And that is kind of like the least of our problems at this point. I heard I want to say now between 50 and 100 employees have either resigned, retired from our office due to the fork or other reasons. Then we have, after that, what happened after that was the firing of our probationary employees. And I don't even know how many were fired right now because they realized they made a mistake and started hiring some people back, which is just so typical of this administration. We also had the letting go of DEIA and EJ employees. They have started to hire some of those people back. So we don't even know the number there. And so what we're facing now is a return to office mandate that's going to happen on March 24th, which there's going to be a whole bunch of people who are not going to be able to commute back into the office. I had people remote working from all over the country. I have 2 people in Indianapolis who cannot commute up every day. And, just people start dropping off there. And then after that, we have this threat of our office moving. So like you mentioned, Ben, the downtown real estate. So on the chopping block, from Trump administration standpoint, is 2 federal buildings, the Kuczynski building and the Metcalf building. And they're going to sell these buildings off. And there's no indication anywhere that they're going to have to take a hit as far as renting out someplace for the people who are in the Kuczynski and Metcalf. And so that says to me that they may try to move our office wholesale somewhere else, the Region 5 office. And the reason why I say this is because Trump administration appointed 4 regional administrators right off the bat, right the second day of the Trump administration, and has not appointed any regional administrator for its Chicago office to the San Francisco office for 6 out of the 10 regions. So it says to me that they are going to do what they promised to do, or they're already doing under the Social Security Administration, which is take all 10 regions. They have the same regions as we do, the Social Security Administration, and bring them down to 4 regions in the nation. And our region is going to be the one that's going to go, and we will have to either move or we'll all be rift here. And everybody will have to seek help from the EPA from Lenexa, Kansas. If you could imagine the Great Lakes office being put in Lenexa, Kansas. So there's so many threats facing EPA and the federal government, including this reorganizations that they're doing where they might, riff entire offices. I believe we're facing that. And then, of course, there's going to be 2 rounds of rifts later in the year for every agency. Trump said that he was going to rift 65% of EPA staff. And then the administration walked that back to say 65% of the appropriation for EPA. But either way, EPA employees are going to take a huge hit here. And so will the American public, because, after this, we're not going to be able to guarantee clean air and clean water or be able to respond to environmental emergencies or all that kind of stuff.
You used a verb. I just couldn't understand what you're saying. I think you said riff. I'm not sure. Spell.
Yeah. RIFFED, and it means reduction in force. We're facing 2 reduction in forces that already been publicized that every agency has to go to, but there's also a chance that the Region 5 office will be riffed, given that there's no provision for housing them anywhere. And so that would be really just devastating for the Great Lakes region. We'll be so far away from where we have to inspect, from environmental emergencies that would happen in the states, the Great Lakes states. And it's something that we are starting to gear up to fight at this point.
So there's probably 2 reasons why, maybe more there. Well, let's stick with the EPA, that this administration is destroying the EPA. 1 is they don't want any regulatory oversight, but 2, they just like beating up federal employees. It's like this perverse mind game that they enjoy. And they created this myth of the deep state and this myth that there's like these robots running around controlling our lives. And now they're enjoying the pain. I think they get charge out of it. They're doing it because they kind of like when they make life miserable for people. They've scapegoated federal employees. And then when there's protests, they just seem to thrive on that. So I feel like there's a practical impact, which is they destroy oversight, and then there's this sadistic pleasure of watching people in pain. Your thoughts on my analysis?
Yeah, I mean, we had the fork in the road, which was something that we've never seen before. It was an offer to allow people to work at home for 6 months and then resign, so to lose their federal job, which was, just kind of an insane, way to go about reducing the workforce. And the same, by the way, thing he offered to the X employees when he first came on at X is the same email fork in the road to try to get people to resign. Then we just recently had, this is just 2 examples, but we just recently had the agency send out, or the OPM send out a email to every EPA staff, and I believe it's every federal employee across the nation, asking them to report in to OPM of what the 5 things they did in the past week that made a difference or, accomplished something. Their 5 accomplishments. We have never had to report to anybody but our managers prior to this. No one knew how to respond. Some agencies did respond, and some agencies like the DOD and Department of Energy told their people not to respond to it. It's just caused, all this havoc in the workplace, a lot of, indecision and, not knowing to do on top of all the other things they're trying to do. So a lot of psychological warfare there. I actually sent out a message to my people telling them how to combat psychological warfare because we believe that that's what's happening here. And those are just 2 examples.
How do you combat psychological warfare?
Well, things like try to remember your family, and try to keep the facts straight and, all kinds of things. Fight back when you can, but don't don't do anything that's going to be unnaturally provoke your attacker, things like that. So there's just a whole, it comes from the army, and they took it from the army, and they're, how they tell prisoners to combat psychological warfare when they've been captured.
I'll tell you what, when you were talking, I was flashing back to last week's Oval Office setup where Vance and Trump started berating Zelensky from Ukraine. And that was, when you were talking, I was thinking, this is what they did to Zelensky. They set him up, they provoked him. And when he responded, and it really, he never lost his cool. He was trying to establish a point that was important for him to establish in the context of that meeting, which is that his country was the one who was the victim. It was not the aggressor, and they were defending themselves, and there was a principle at stake that he was advocating. So when he made that point, then they turned on him, and they Vance set him up. Oh, you're insulting the president. You're insulting our country. You're insulting American citizens. You owe us an apology. And then in the aftermath, Nicole, there's a chorus coming from MAGA and Fox, et cetera, and so forth, saying that we cannot proceed with assistance to Ukraine unless Zelensky steps down. For all I know, Trump will say that at tonight's speech at Congress. Okay, so you won't hear this for a few days after that speech. By then, it may be news. And I'm like, when you were talking, I'm thinking, yes. So there were some media critics who said, "Oh, Zelensky should have just shut up, taken it, not said a word," because Trump was toying with him and waiting for him to lose it. And it's that bizarre situation where you're worried that if you don't say anything, you're agreeing. Your silence could be viewed as agreeing with what Trump is saying. But if you do say something, you provoke Trump, and then he will take whatever you say and turn it around and twist it and make you look worse than you are. And then he has his chorus in the media to back him up. I believe that's happening with federal employees as well. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. We've had a lot of discussions here in the union about how far we should go to avoid provoking the president or Lee Zeldin, who is our administrator, who put on a very, nice show of being completely reasonable to the Senate and actually got some Democratic votes. And then he comes here, and what he has been doing is just following in lockstep with what Trump wants and what Elon Musk wants. So, I agree with that. I think that we will have to take strategic steps when we can, and then ones that will, unnecessarily provoke, we'll have to think about those ones.
And by the way, when the letter, I had a laugh at him in some ways, dark humor. The letter to show what you've done in the last week coming from Musk, which is so twisted and weird, because like the things you do are things he's against. So if you respond, he may punish you for that. The things you do mean regulate polluters, so to prevent pollution. And a few times during the many twists and turns of my journalistic career, Nicole, new bosses have come on aboard to run the Reader, and it's the same thing. It's like, please explain to me. You get these memos. They're like written by robots. Please explain to me what you've done. They're like, what did you do today? One time I said, okay, you want to know this call, that call, that. I read this newspaper. Anyway, it is psychological. Go ahead.
I don't think that they would know or understand what we do when they get the message. It's all being put into, we heard, a gigantic AI program. But like if Elon Musk or Donald Trump read one of the emails, they would not, they have no idea what EPA does. They don't have no idea what our employees do. And the fact that there's employees now who have left, who did some things that we really need doing, and are now, that stuff is not being done. We're at, low staffing at this point, and really can't lose any more before we start to impact the protection of American people.
All right, let's contrast a bit with Trump 1. My memory was as bad as it was not nearly this bad. So contrast, if you will, Trump 1, which is his first term, with what you're going through now.
Yeah, so this is really, I remember when during Trump won, I was telling you, this is unprecedented. But we are in Trump 2, and this is unprecedented when looking at Trump 1. Trump did not riff our employees. He allowed for us to lose employees by attrition. So we did lose. We did go down to 800 employees from 1,000, but it was all due to attrition. And so there was a lot of loss there, a lot of enforcement actions that weren't taken. Oh my goodness, enforcement went down to next to nothing. But at least, there was some semblance of trying to conduct, the EPA's work. This time, the attacks on EPA have come fast and furious. Just in the first, month and a half, we are, taking blow after blow. And the threats next of RIFs, which are reductions in forces from our regular employees. Forget EJ people and DEI or the probationary employees, but now they're just going to go after tenured federal employees and RIF them. We never had a RIF here. I mean, I've been here for 33 years and we have never had a RIF before. So it's just the loss of employees could be devastating to protecting human health and the environment. And then, like you said, all the psychological warfare that's going on. We're fighting each step of the way, but we have to comply first and grieve later.
Wow.
We don't have an ability to issue an injunction against the Trump administration for doing these things.
Well, there was pushback. There were some lawsuits filed. So there is that pushback. How successful have those lawsuits been?
Well, in dealing with the personnel issues like the probationary employee firings and stuff like that, we're bumping up against this idea that the unions don't have standing. So with this recent one in San Francisco, where the judge found that the firing of the probationary employees were illegal. He also found that the union did not have standing. He said that the other groups that were not representing federal employees do have standing, but that the union does not have standing. And the reason for this is it's called, did I explain this before? It's called sovereign immunity. So sovereign immunity is when the federal government allows you to sue it because technically they have immunity from all suit. And so where the federal government has allowed employees or their representatives to sue them is in the context of the Merit System Protection Board or the Federal Labor Relations Agency. And if you don't sue under those two administrative agencies, you can't ever get to federal court. And that seems to be something that is showing in the federal courts, at least, to be consistently held, that we cannot, that the union itself, it's representing employees on personnel matters like the firing of the probies, that they cannot proceed to federal court. So even though that was a great ruling by that judge in California saying that the Pro-B firings were illegal, it did strip AFGE National out of the case.
Okay, so I have to get this off my chest. I've been waiting to say this since I read about these judicial rulings. So this is me, not Nicole. Okay, Trump and Musk, don't punish her for what I'm about to say. These rulings about standing, in my humble opinion, Nicole, are utterly absurd. And I don't know if you are a fan of novels. To understand them, you'd have to read Joseph Heller's Catch-22, or you have to read any novel by Kafka, Kafka, from Czechoslovakia. Look them up, millennials. Anyway, the point is this: utter absurdity, no rhyme or reason, makes no sense. The notion that a union representing federal employees who claim they've been unfairly fired in violation of their contract, whatever reason a judge cooks up, and judges can cook up all kinds of reasons, okay? Whatever reason they cook up, them cooking up a broth that says union of workers do not have standing in matters regarding the termination of their jobs is absurd, Nicole. It makes no sense. I don't care what.
Yeah.
It,
I mean, the other
yeah,
devastating thing about this, which makes it even more Kafkaesque, is that both the Federal Labor Relations Authority and the Merit System Protection Board do not have enough people to act on this. So what Trump does is he cuts the head off those agencies that federal employees cannot even go there and satisfy their administrative uh, rights, and then appeal to a federal court. So they can't go through the administrative process because he defangs those agencies. And then you have nowhere to go. You have absolutely nowhere to go. Federal courts saying, "Oh no, you have to go through those agencies." Those agencies, Trump has completely, taken out of commission, and so there's no relief for federal employees.
yeah. And this is my belief, and this is me, not Nicole. A judge who made that ruling is basically saying, I don't want to stick my neck out, so I'm cooking something up to pass this on. So I'm not the person responsible for getting Trump and Musk mad at me. That's either say the government has the right to fire them, or say no, the government doesn't have the right to just unilaterally rip up a contract. But to say the employees don't have standing in the matter of their jobs is absurd. And you wouldn't like it if some judge did it to you, to put it mildly, judges. Anyway, I had to get that off my chest.
Yeah, I mean, and one thing they could say is, look, Trump has taken, in effect, made these two agencies that we're supposed to go to impotent, and so now I'm going to take on the case because he has, disabled them, and so, employees don't have uh, the ability to go to any of those agencies. They could say that, and then he says, I'm going to step in now because the federal government can't make
Yes.
no relief available to any federal employee when they're going through this.
And this also exposes how precarious the situation is, because again, Congress isn't going to do anything. They're controlled by Trump. There's nobody in the Trump administration who's going to do anything because there's no one who's playing the role of wise advisors telling them, no, you can't do this. Okay. And so quite naturally, people look to the courts. Well, if the judges are too scared to do anything, we really are screwed. And I know there's some judges who have taken a stand. I'm not saying all the judges have been are as weak as some of these judges are, but that just shows you how precarious the situation is, Nicole. If you're totally dependent on getting the right ruling from a judge, wow, that's a roll of the dice. I learned that. Somebody told me that when I came to Chicago in the early '80s. He goes, Ben, there's a difference. You may be right, but if the judge rules against you, it doesn't matter. It's like a wise old man once told me that. And so that's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the public's attitude so far as you can discern. Again, we're 6 weeks into this. Do you have a sense that the public opinion is shifting to your side?
Yeah, I mean, there was a exit poll taken of Trump voters and all voters about EPA, and they found that over 70% of all Trump voters wanted EPA to do more in their community, not less, and 80% over 80% of all voters want the same thing, for EPA to do more in their communities, not less. We are getting support. We had a rally down here in Chicago, and we had lots of people there. But I think that, until we can show that there's been real palpable change to EPA's, ability to protect human health and the environment, we're really not going to get that much, uh, support from the public. So we've been trying to get our word out there of how, this is affecting their lives. I do believe that lawsuits aren't going to save us. I think it's going to have to be the court of public opinion instead of, district courts. That's really going to have to change or turn around things, or, the midterms. But, Trump is already slated to do all of his damage before the midterms. The last round of RIFs are supposed to end September 30th of this year. That means EPA could be completely devastated and have very little staff. and we can't. It won't be after the midterms. It will be before.
And one more time, you can't do this enough, in my opinion. Let people know what the consequences are if the EPA is decimated.
Yeah, I mean, so many things. I was just talking to an air monitoring expert here, and she was in my office, and she was telling me how so many air monitoring experts have left already, and she was considering leaving. Now, this is the thing. These air monitors are like a network of monitors throughout the country that tell us when your air is not safe. Okay, that's why it's so important to have this network. Under the Biden administration, we beefed it up to be even better. Okay, but if there's no staff here to see what results are coming through and then analyze them to try to protect the people, then we won't know where in the United States there is there's an air problem. Okay, and we rely on this air monitoring, these air monitoring people to look at that data. But if there's no one here to look at that data, then no one can fix it, and you'll just be, breathing in dirty air. Those that we're talking about.
And also the impact on the water system.
Right.
I mean, Great Lakes. Go ahead.
Yeah, we are, a primary enforcer of the Safe Drinking Water Act. So your drinking water source, whatever it is, here it's Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, have to provide you with safe water, and they have to do sampling of it. And then if they find that they have not complied, then EPA steps in and gets them to clean up your water. Okay? If there's no EPA there, there's no one going to be there to tell them that they have to clean up their water. They have safe drinking water, and that the pollutants that are in it need to be, screened before it gets to your house. All that kind of stuff's going to go by the wayside. Also, we've had oil spills and all kinds of spills in our waters, our navigable waters. And if there aren't EPA employees here or not enough, they're not going to be able to clean that stuff up, right? We go on site when there's an environmental catastrophe like East Palestine, or like the Flint crisis, or like the wildfires in LA, and we go clean it up. If there's not enough staff here, we won't be able to do that.
Yeah. And to those who say, oh, Ben, well, we have a local EPA, or we have the city doing it. I will now, this is a perfect transition to the Supreme Court ruling that just came down today, right before we began recording. I now read from the New York Times. The timing in this was really unbelievable. And here's the lead from Analytic Story. Quote, the Supreme Court sided with San Francisco on Tuesday in a challenge to water quality regulations issued by the Environmental Protection Agency, in a ruling that could have sweeping implications for the agency's ability to limit offshore pollution. The 5-4 decision dealt another blow to the agency, which has recently sustained several losses before the court over its effort to protect the environment. The case was notable because it created unusual alliances. Liberal San Francisco found itself on the same side as mining and petroleum trade groups like the National Mining Association, the American Farm Bureau Federation, and the American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers in opposing the EPA. And here's the paragraph. It says it all. This dispute fundamentally focused on human waste and how San Francisco disposes of it. The question before the court was whether the Clean Water Act of '72 allowed the EPA to impose prohibition I can't even say it, on wastewater released into the Pacific Ocean, and to penalize the city for violating them. The city wanted to be able to free essentially from EPA requirements as to dumping wastewater. And you know what wastewater is, listeners. I'm cleaning it up. But I'm like, if I have to depend on the city of San Francisco to protect the Pacific Ocean, I'm in a heap of trouble. I don't know if they're lazy. I don't know if they're trying to prove, that they're not liberal, too liberal. Okay, whatever weird stuff they're going on in San Francisco, they're joining forces to say, what? We don't want to have to follow these regulations. So let's just dump the shit in the water. There, I said it. Nicole, that's my read of it. What's yours? Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the kind of cases that I brought when I was an attorney for EPA, these exact cases against municipalities all through uh, all through Region 5. So, we have so many of these um, it, municipalities that are dumping your waste into things like the Cuyahoga River or the White River in Indiana or the Umami River in Ohio, and into the Illinois River and all kinds of places throughout the region. And so what we did was we did the same thing that Region 9 did against San Francisco. We brought a case against them and said, stop discharging that icky stuff. You have to create a way to treat it. And we did it here in Chicago, and that's why we built that huge um, uh, basin out in the far suburbs to handle all of this waste until they could bleed it back to the plant to be treated. So this is helping, the Chicago River, which is getting much less sewage, and all rivers across the Midwest. And actually, our cases are mostly done with. I guess that this case was like kind of more of a legacy case, but Region 5 has seen such a benefit from this. More days that rivers are swimmable, that beaches are swimmable for the American public, cleaning up rivers because the municipalities were the last big polluters of the rivers. We had basically addressed the private industry, and so allowing more species to thrive in those waters, not to have a floating sewer like we used to have in the Chicago River, just creating a better place to boat there. I don't think that we're necessarily recommending people to swim there, but certainly people are boating in the Chicago River much more than they used to because of EPA's actions here. So many different recreational sports and recreational activities that people do, jet skis, all that kind of stuff, have been helped by EPA's actions against municipalities to clean up E. coli and fecal coliform and all that kind of stuff, which is dangerous to people, dangerous to people's human health if they get it in their mouth.
Yeah, and folks, Chicagoans who may be listening to this, I'm going to tell you, if you have faith in the city of Chicago to always do the right thing without any oversight when it comes to the environment, you haven't been paying attention what's going to happen on the southeast side under like 3 different mayors now, and the concentration of polluting industries that have been dumped down there. In the city of Chicago, you can't trust them to do the right thing when it comes to the environment. This is me speaking, not Nicole. And so that is why, one more reason, you need a vigorous EPA. All right, I'm going to close with this question that comes out of sort of left field, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So in the weeks since Trump took office, day doesn't pass where I see an article where somebody, I'm trying not to laugh, the dark humor here, Nicole, is expressing dismay that the promulgations of the Trump administration are impacting them in a negative way because they voted for Trump. Or this from across the board, all kinds of different people saying, oh my God, well, I voted for him. I didn't realize you're going to deport my cousin. Or I voted for him. I didn't realize he was going to fire me. Or I voted for him. I didn't realize these cuts were going to impact my property, et cetera, and so forth. And I could go down the list. I voted for him. I didn't know he was going to support Netanyahu 100%. Oh, I've heard it many, many times. So have you had any conversations with any of your fellow federal employees, EPA workers in particular, who said, oh my God, I voted for him. I didn't realize he was going to turn Elon Musk on us. You ever heard anything like that?
Yeah. There have been certain Republicans at EPA who are union members who, have admitted that they, voted because they wanted the price of eggs to go down. and not because they thought that the agency was really going to be dismantled. But the real truth is that Project 2025 has in it the exact blueprint that Trump is using. And so if you really wanted to know what he wanted to do, even though he walked away from it, he tried to walk away from Project 2025. Right now, he is following it to the T, and it was out there for anyone to see and just take a look at beforehand. But I do sympathize with them because I think that so much of that is obscured by Mr. Trump when he's running. He said that I want clean air and clean water. He said that throughout his campaign, and people don't understand what that takes to do that, and they don't understand that it has to be a robust EPA. And so they believe him. They believe that he really wants to give them clean air and clean water, when really what he's doing with his other hand behind everybody's back is trying to destroy the agency.
Yeah, you're a better person than I am. I struggle with the sympathy issue. I have to tell you right now, I do struggle with this, Nicole, and it ultimately doesn't matter. And I ultimately realize that you're right when you think in terms of bringing together a coalition to stop this madness. If no, at the midterms, if not be later on down the road. So your overall point is an absolute go. And I'm just telling you, I struggle with this whenever I hear somebody, because you're right. He said it. He told you what you were going to do. And I began the show by talking about lefties in denial. This stuff is going on right now, and they go, "Oh well," they don't want to confront what's happening in our country. And so I struggle with this, Nicole. I must admit. And I saw this quote in a paper. We'll leave it with this. This is unbelievable. I don't know if you saw this one. It was an unnamed federal employee. And this was when the fork in the road, which is Elon Musk's clumsy attempt at like a metaphor. And I think someone told him about a Robert Frost poem or something. Anyway, and so you have a choice. You can continue with your federal job, which is going to be eliminated. So it's really not much of a choice. Or you could take this money they're going to pay you, which I don't know if they really will come through on this one, Nicole. So I really don't even know if it was a choice, you know? So it's really get fired or resign. That's essentially what the choice was. That's the fork. That's a great fork there, Elon. So some employees wanted to take the money, all right, the severance package. And the unions as a whole were saying, no, don't take the severance package. It's a trick. They're not going to pay you. They're not obligated to pay you. It's a promise that they're not obligated to keep. You can't trust them anyway. So if they don't have an obligation, they're definitely not going to pay you. And I saw this one federal employee said, I disagree with the union. I believe in free will. And I'm like, man, what the free will? You mean Free Willy? You say you like that as a movie? Free will. What a joke, man. Just the concept. Like, what is going on in people's minds? Like, I have this principle I believe in called free will. So I want to take this made up offer, which they will not follow through on. I want the right to take up this made up offer because I do not want to be coerced into doing something I don't want to do by a group that's dedicated to the common interest of us all. Nicole, when I read that quote in the paper, I thought that must have been an AI robot. That couldn't have been a real human being who said that, because that is so freaking insulting. But anyway, your thoughts on free will versus following your union. Go ahead.
No, I mean, the Trump administration is already dialing that offer back. There was the whole idea of the offer is that you resign now and then you're able to work at home. You're able to just sit home on telework on administrative leave and not have to do any work. And then that leave would end in September and then you would be resigned. Okay, that was the whole idea. But what we're finding is that the agency is saying, oh, you took the fork? Well, sorry, we still need you to come in to finish all this other work that you have to do. And so people are not getting the full deal. They're being called in for months at a time and recalled. And, where the agency is saying, no, you don't get to, stay at home on administrative leave. You have to come in and do work. So they're already beginning to dial back that. And they just put it into place last week. So who knows what's going to happen? But certainly the administration is not, is not living up to its deal.
Listen, guys, just take a look at Donald Trump's career as a businessman. Okay, just ask the contractors who work for Donnie Trump what his word is worth. All right, I mean, free will means you're free to screw yourself. That's what free will means in this case. Nicole, anything you want to add before I let you go?
No, I'm fine. Thanks. I think we talked about a lot of stuff today.
Yes, we covered the waterfront, so to speak. Nicole, thank you very much for coming on and keep up the good work. I know this is a long struggle and it's a hard struggle, and you guys are on the front lines, as I said last time. So keep it up, all right?
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, that's Nicole Cantello. I also want to thank producer Chris. He does an outstanding job, and I know Nicole agrees with me when I say, hey, producer Chris, give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. Peace and love, everybody.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Ben Joravsky Show. If you want to help the show, don't forget you can follow us on YouTube at Benny J Show. You can like the clips, like the shorts, watch the videos. It helps out. Once we get to a certain level, we might actually get a few dollars from YouTube. So that would be really nice, and it won't cost you a penny. You can go visit Ben's brand new website, thebenjoravskyshow.com. Ben is constantly updating new featured articles. Podcasts are all up there. And if you want to throw in some change, well, the digital hat's there for you too. So make sure you check it out, thebenjoravskyshow.com.